Welcome back to the Dynasty Dingers podcast. Today is Tuesday, May 6th. I am joined by two very special guests, including Doc. Today on the show, we have Rhys Jensen, or I guess you could say boss, owner, and overall prospect monster, right, Ross? And Rhys White of Prospects Live today. Excited to get to chat with both of them, but before we bring them in, Doc, what's going on?
Dude, this is the second week you've done some accidental passive aggressiveness. Last week we had Frank Stample on, and he says, "Frank, you are our best guest ever." And I'm like, dude, such shame to all the other guests. It's like it is just put out. And then just now, I don't know if everyone picked up on the language he used. He said, "I want to welcome two solid, great guests, including Doc." So that means one of Ross or Rhys here. One of you is not a good guest in Matt's mind, and that's the mystery. We're gonna find out.
We're gonna find out over the next hour, I guess. Yeah.
I interpreted that so differently. Two great guests, and then Doc.
That's the way I interpret it as well.
Well, we're gonna have a fun episode today, guys. We're gonna dive into a little bit of what Prospects Live has been doing since the merger, and we're gonna give Ross you the opportunity to kind of talk a little bit more to the listener and those members of Scout the Statline that may be unfamiliar or not fully caught up. So that's kind of the general basis of what we're going to go through today in the first segment. Second segment, we're going to get into a little more philosophy. We're going to talk about whether we like to evaluate major league players more or the minor league ranks, or Rhys, I know college, big for you. And then we'll wrap it up with some prospect talk as we actually now have some data and some numbers to really dive into things. But ultimately, I think it'll be a great show. Ross, I'm going to kind of toss it over to you real quick. Give the listener an outline of what's been going on in your timeline over, let's say, the last 3 months.
We're gonna halt that. I want to talk to Rhys first, brother. Sounds we got Rhys. I don't know if you're noticing. This is not what This is why it's still an SDS brand. A little bit Wild West out here. Everyone who listens knows who Ross is. We've had him on repeatedly. We've never had him on.
But he needs to give the backstory, and then we'll give Ross the 10 minutes of glory that we always do.
I think you meant Rhys. This is an amazing podcast, folks. If you're not riveted, all right. I've been swayed.
A lot of R's and S's in the names.
A lot of hats. Ross, what's up, brother?
Okay, well, hey, first of all, I want to point this out. I saw Doc was wearing his Prospect Larceny branded hat, and I was like, well, I got one of those. I'm going to go get it. So shout out to Prospect Larceny. That's one of our guys at STS. He does great formulated rankings, a lot of fun. So I wanted to give him a shout out. Okay, so you want to know what's been going on the last few months, huh? Well, I mean, I'll just be really straightforward with about, how everything has kind of gone down. I was really invigorated coming into this season. I had something of a rougher year last year, I think, just being consistent with my stuff. I had a lot of personal stuff going on. So shout out to you guys for helping carry STS through that time because, couldn't have done it without you. I was really invigorated coming to this season, really working hard on creating a lot of great content for STS. And over the years, I don't know how well known this is, but Jordan and Prospects Live have had crossover for years. And so I found out at some point, or I realized, I didn't even find out. I remember reading it sometime on Twitter. Back then it was Twitter, that Smata had been looking into moving to Boise. And then I was like, you know what? I'm living there. How odd is it that the Prospects Live owner, we have this crossover with Jordan, might be in the same town as me. So I just reached out to him and I was like, hey, are you in Boise? And he was like, yes. So we just decided to kind of connect. And this is going back probably at least over a year ago now. And we've just kind of become friends and just talking about the different things that we've been dealing with, with our different websites. And there's a lot of work involved, there's a ton of work involved. It's not just writing articles and posting videos or anything like that. There's a lot that goes into it. So especially the old website, because it was just not really set up to be automated and functional. So there's a lot of manual effort that went into it. But at some point he was just like, hey, do you want to like, be a part of Prospects Live? And that's kind of how it evolved. So like just decided we were going to team up, and we've been working pretty hard on it since. And I think we've got it really well delineated. Like the vision that I see between Prospects Live and Scout the Statline is pretty clear. One side, you're going to have the data center that's going to power all the information that flows into like Prospects Live. We might expand there, become more of a general baseball site as well, not sacrificing any of the great prospect content that we do, but just adding on more in different areas like that. And Scout the Statline is going to continue to grow, and the information that we build out and create is going to grow, and it's going to help fill the veins. That's how I put it on X. Was it's going to be like the heart, the heartbeat, kind of pumping it full of juice and energy. But as of right now, like where people are going to go depends on what they want. So Scout the Statline is still going to be this place that has these great leaderboards, great snapshot view information. If you just want to look at something real quick and kind of get a good idea, like the power in like our peak projections is pretty unparalleled in my opinion. You get on there, you scroll for about 15 seconds, and you're coming up with prospects that like, oh, maybe I need to know about this guy. Or you can go to Prospect Larceny's leaderboard or Diggs and Bags leaderboards. We got all sorts of good detailed information where people just can get an advantage just by browsing it. If you're looking for something that's more curated, if you want articles, if you want expert opinion and analysis where people are going to be telling you like, this is what I'm doing, this is what I think you ought to be doing, that's going to be where Prospects Live comes in. So it really just is dependent on flavors. The STS is going to be actionable intel that's readily accessible, at a discount price. $5 a month is pretty cheap, that you can just get into and get the information you want, extract what you want out of it. Prospects Live is going to be more detailed, people oriented, curated content. So we got people like Rhys, which is amazing. So it's just different flavors. But right now they're staying pretty much as they are now.
SDS is for robot stuff. Prospects Live is for people stuff. That's for all the dumb guys out there who weren't following along. I think that's what I got out of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really nice, succinct way of putting it. I think that kind of sums it up for sure.
Rhys, that's a really good opportunity now to bring you in and talk about what Prospects Live has been doing, what the focal point is. I think Ross did a really good job of, highlighting the fact that it is more personal scouting. You and I talked on the episode that we did for Mailbag last week about some of the games and the players that you have seen, but I wanted you to just talk about your journey within Prospects Live and maybe if you can put more of a highlight on exactly what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Do you want me to start with my journey on how I got to Prospects Live, or do you want me to start on the content side?
I'd love to hear how you got there.
Absolutely.
Okay. So back in the day, the website was founded by Jeff Ponce, Mata, Eddie Aminger, Lance Brozdowski, who is one of the best pitching minds in all of baseball. Honestly, he's the best public-facing pitching mind out there. I genuinely believe that. Jason Panini, who was working with the team, after he left Prospects Live. And then, I'm forgetting someone else. I'm forgetting one of the original founders, but that's not important. So one day I get approached by Jeff Ponce, who, went on to go to Baseball America and is doing great things as well. And he was like, hey, I have this article idea for you could you write it at Prospects Live? Because at the time I was a really big fan of Chris Bubich, the pitcher for the Royals. I thought he was better than everyone was ranking him. And obviously now he's looked like one of the better starters in all of baseball. But he said, hey, I want you to write the call-up article. And I wrote it. And it was awesome. And then he was like, do you just want to stick around? And I was like, I mean, I guess. Like I was bouncing around between different places. At one point, I founded my own website, 6-Man Rotation, where my co-host of a podcast that is no longer around anymore went on to go work for the Houston Astros, win a World Series, and now he works for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And then I went on to write at Fantrax a little bit. I was writing with Clegg and Cross at the same time. So this was before Clegg became the absolute prospect behemoth that he has become. he was more writing like general like dynasty stuff, and then all of a sudden, the prospect lane sort of took off for him, and he's been a rock star in the industry. He has Beck over there. Beck's just launched his new podcast, which I'm very excited to listen to, even though I was giving him a hard time on Twitter about it. But it's and then so basically, things have started to. I started to write reports. I wanted to be on the pro side. I kind of left the dynasty game for a little bit. I was like, I just kind of want to focus on real life prospects. And then at one point I went over and I wrote at Just Baseball for a little bit. And then I just got offered the director of pro scouting position at Prospects Live when Jake Kern stepped down to go focus on real life stuff. And it's kind of been a whirlwind ever since then. I mean, now let's see. I feel like I'm on every podcast that's over there. I feel like we just launched a new one, which was awesome. And then all of a sudden, this Stadium/Bally Sports Live thing fell into our lap, and now once a week I record that, and that's been awesome. Me and Drew have been having a great time with that, and I feel like I should take a breath here because that's kind of where I am right now.
Well, man, I'm sorry. After all those successes, I think, the good Lord had to knock you down and bring you on this, what's going on here. We had to take you down a notch because, yeah, you're crushing it, brother. And I was going to ask you if you're a Bubic or a Bubich guy, because I know it's controversial.
I'm a Bubich guy. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you, man. I'm huge on just the player, though. In all reality, I'm happy to hear that. I think that this time next year, as long as he can stay healthy, it's gonna be drafted like an SP1. Frankly, that's just where I'm at with it.
Mm-hmm.
Rhys, when you kind of tracking that journey, and Ross, I'll let you jump in. I just had a quick question for Rhys. We talked a lot last week about the college game, the draft that's coming up. When you look at the lifespan that you've had within, let's say, the baseball community, what do you think your biggest enjoyment comes from? Is it college scouting, amateur scouting? Is it the prospect side? Is it the major leagues? Like, where do you fall on now that you've transitioned all the way through?
So I think the biggest thing that I'm really excited about is I'm at the lowest level of affiliated baseball. That's the closest ones to me in the Cal League. And I'm excited to follow the journey of a bunch of those, really young prospects who haven't had a chance to fully break out yet. They're Angels prospects. They might not get as much love as their crosstown rival and crosstown affiliate in the Dodgers prospects and everything like that. So I like following that journey. I think the pro side is what really invigorates me. I do love college baseball and I love the amateur game. I mean, this draft is really testing how much I love them, because this draft that we're going to have in a couple weeks is not very strong. So you really have to love the sport of baseball to follow this draft, because after about the first 10 or so picks, it's not going to be a fun draft for people to, follow along with. But I think that for me, the big thing is following the minor leagues, following everybody and the steps in which, the changes that they make, whether that's going from single A to high A, or, whether they have to repeat single A and they have to make a swing change, or if there's a body change, if there's like a body composition thing, like they become more athletic and they slim down a little bit, or they add a little bit more muscle and start hitting for more power. That's the part of the game that I'm really fascinated by.
I would just jump in to say that, we don't really talk a whole lot of college ball on here. And I think in general, the fantasy world kind of overlooks it for the most part, even those dynasty prospect guys. For me, I've been slowly getting better with it. I can name some guys from college right now. No, but, it used to be that like when the MLB draft happened, that's when I'm just trying to take it all in. And I think a lot of us still is like that. That's kind of where we're at a lot of the time. So I just wanted to bring up what you said about this year's draft class sounds like you're saying it's shallow. Now, I know there was this thing last year just because of how good the 2023 draft class was. Last year's the 24 class was kind of being, I don't want to say shamed, but kind of downgraded, saying it's not going to be that great of a class. I don't know. I'm starting to. It's feeling deeper. It's feeling like it's going to. Maybe they haven't all had time to bust yet. But I guess I would ask you, Rhys, being more plugged in, did you kind of see that coming all along, that the 24 class was underrated? And then also, or was this something that's kind of grown on you a little as well?
So I thought the 24 class going into it was a little I thought it was like not going to be very good. And then all of a sudden I started digging into it more, and we're seeing, I feel like if I start naming prospects, all of a sudden I'm going to miss a bunch of guys. We have, Theo Gillen, he's actually not been great to start the season, but who's the guy? So many names. We're looking at breakouts right now. The Braves have one in single A. I'm drawing a blank on the name. There's so many names that I have to keep a track of that.
Owen Carey.
Yeah, he's been awesome. So the depth of that prep class was kind of overshadowed, and the depth of the prep arms, like Ryan Sloan's been awesome. Brandon Dowdy has been really cool. Boston Bateman has struggled a little bit, but it's the depth of that high school class that I think has helped really make that class look a lot better. Where the 25 class, I don't think there is that depth of the high school class. I don't think there's a depth of the college class. I think it's like a bunch of college arms that you're going to have to take early. But like in fantasy, like how excited are you going to be to draft the next? Okay. So a guy I've seen twice now is Tyler Bremner. I think that a pro comp would be like stat wise would be Matthew Liberatore, and Matthew Liberatore has been a complicated prospect to follow. That is at the very least, and he might be a top 10 pick in this class. So it's something that I'm not super. I think I don't know if I've said this on a podcast or not, but in this 2025 like first year player draft or for 2026, I'll be trading all my picks to get future picks later. Is I think the strategy that I would recommend to people.
I did that, so I'm really happy you said that. And honestly, I don't want to be talking that much. We got Ross who hasn't said a word in a while because I keep running in here. But you dropped the wrong name, brother. These guys are both pointing at me. I've become like I did not believe in Liberator. I was kind of out. I was like another boring St. Louis arm.
He's your Chris Bubich. Like he's kind of turned into yours.
Kind of, yeah. Like I like them both, but he's my guy. I saw this breakout happening this year. I'm like, no, it's happening. I announced it, and then he's kept doing it. Like tonight, we got this great showdown. We got Liberador and some other guy, Skenis or something like that from Pittsburgh. But Liberator came out and struck out the side. I mean, it's the Pirates, so whatever. But I mean, I think he's the real deal, and so you got me triggered, bro. I'm sorry, but
I think what Rhys was saying though, and it's a good point.
It has been a complicated path.
And it's 6, 7, 8 years, right? I think it's closer to 7 or 8 years for him having that prospect pedigree come to life since being a prep arm drafted, then traded from Tampa Bay to St. Louis for Randy Arozarena. And I'm starting to feel that in Dynasty. And Ross, I want your take on this because I know how you feel about pitching. But if you took an Owen Hall or you took a Ryan Sloan, or you're thinking of taking a prep arm this year, yeah, maybe best case scenario, they're up in 3 years and they don't have great command and they're not polished, but realistically, it could be the 7 or 8 year track that Liberatore was on to provide the return value. What are your thoughts when you're constructing your dynasty teams? Do you focus on prep pitching, or do you just say, you know what, screw it, I'll trade for it when I need it?
Well, you've seen my teams,
I do know.
Well, so I know Doc doesn't agree with me on this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway because this is the way I've operated. I don't really spend much time or energy on pitching prospects. And it's not because I don't think that there is going to be really excellent arms coming out. It's that I think it's fairly unpredictable. And from my perspective, when it comes to Dynasty, every little inch of advantage that you get is what separates you ultimately from everybody else that you're playing against. So for me, I don't put any energy there. I focus on what I'm good at and what I think is more predictable, and that's the bats. And not just that it usually takes less time for it to translate. Here's an example. Tyler Glasnow, he was a guy I loved when he was coming up, and he's a really good pitcher, but it also took about 7 years before I was realizing any returns, whereas my hitters were more advanced and ready much sooner. It took a long time with him, and even now he's just injured all the time, so it's hard to rely on that. So my approach has been to develop as much good hitting as I can and trade it for pitching that I know is strong and established when I need to. That's always been my approach. It's evolved more so that way, I think, as I've gotten older and more experienced, and I think it's worked pretty well. So I stick with it. I do want to say something though. When was that Bubich article that you wrote?
Oh, that was during the 60 game season. 2020.
2020?
That's when he got called up. So I've been around for this is going on my 5th year at Prospects Live.
Oh, that's pretty incredible. So that you just like took me back to where I got my start a little bit, because my first article, I started over at the Dynasty Guru, and I had zero ambitions really. I just liked talking about this stuff, and I wanted to share, I think, some of the strategies that I had that worked for me. So I wrote my first article, and it was kind of like a trial test period with Dynasty Guru on Nick Pivetta, And it just, talking about Bubic just kind of reminded me of that same kind of thing. Like now he's pitching good, at least this year, but it took a long time before those returns were realized, and still even now you could say, well, it wasn't a smashing success. But I thought he was going to he wasn't coming off a good season, but I thought he was going to be a guy that was going to take the next step. That was the article that I wrote. Yeah, I had all sorts of metrics in there and support.
All right.
It's funny, the Tyler Glasnow draft season, and I just pulled it up to kind of look at some of the bats just from a reference point, because I think, at least personally, I look at Glasnow as still in the prime, right? So still 5 to 7 years of fantasy relevance, whether he's on the waiver wire towards the end of that or not is so be it. But this is in this draft class, you had Anthony Rendon, you had Garrett Cole. Those are just some of the names at the top that you could have taken with an FYPD, Javi Baez as well. And I think about the years of value those players have given us in the fantasy community, right? I mean, Garrett Cole, it almost has a complete career when it comes to fantasy return and what you're expected for an FYPD pick. Javi Baez still somehow relevant today, right? Maybe he wasn't 3 weeks ago, but there he is. And I think that just kind of goes into the prep concept, right? The prep arms, when you take them, it usually takes them longer to get up. So you're getting less time, and you may be better taking a collegiate bat, collegiate arm. I just thought that was interesting, right? Looking back on the past. Rhys, you talked about not necessarily focusing on dynasty so much. Are you still in dynasty leagues? And then are you focused on pitching, or do you follow what Ross's concept is there?
So I am in a few dynasty leagues. I've been cutting it back because at one point I was overwhelmed with having to set, what was my peak? Like 17 rosters at one point, and 15 of them were daily leagues. So it was becoming like my full-time job to set these lineups and track out platoons and everything like that. And then it just became too much. So now I'm in like 3 leagues, and I agree with Ross. Especially I just got out of a pretty deep rebuild in the 30-team league that I care about a lot. And a lot of that was trading for hitting. And then, I'll overpay. I'll pay 10 cents on the dollar to get pitching when I'm ready to compete. And now I'm finally ready to compete. And I'm making moves for Chris Bassett and everything like that. You have to make some smart moves at a certain point. I was the worst team in the league last year. And the guy who ended up he had Hunter Brown. He was done with him. This was when Hunter Brown was not viewed as one of the best pitchers in baseball. And I pounced on that opportunity. I think I gave up 3 or 4 prospects, a major leaguer, and a pick. And now all of a sudden I have a bona fide ace on my hands. And then I've held on to Chris Bubic and everything like that. I held on to Casey Mize. I held on to Rhys Olsen. So, sometimes it's a lot of luck, but I do think that, building out with hitting first and then filling in the pitching, it's okay. I think it's okay to overpay a little bit on pitching when you're ready to start competing.
Doc, that follows right in line with kind of the philosophy we've been talking about this season, right? Targeting the post-hype pitchers at times. I wanted you to talk about a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think Rhys and I have similar tastes in pitchers. I'm a huge Rhys Olsen guy as well. I like these guys who can kind of go and pitch. Maybe they're not going to overpower you with one. I don't know. Is Max Meyer going to be a one-trick pony for this year? Maybe, right? What's going to happen if they sit on the slider? Well, we just saw the Athletics sit on that slider and obliterate them. So, these other guys, they can just get it done. But yeah, Matt and I, it's kind of funny. We just started finding ourselves naturally gravitating toward maybe more about just focusing on MLB more. His prospects are awesome, but then you get your heart broken a couple times, and also it's just at some point you want to win, right? You want to win your dynasty leagues. We're in 30 teamers, right? And we're in, so at no point are the prospects going to get out of our heads, because you can't have that in a 30 teamer dynasty league, because you got to know a lot of guys. You got to do those offseason drafts, but it's a love-hate thing. It's kind of just, and I would say that it's almost just an extension of that prospect journey. We're talking about Liberator. We're talking, it's we had drafted in 2018, and 2025 is when he's coming out and looking like a stud. So it's the journey continues once you're in MLB. I mean, look at Jackson Holiday. People are giving up on him already. Meanwhile, he's casually hitting 275, 340 plus OBP. That's actually good. On the year, he's hitting that. But it feels like he's been a total bust. And Ross is a maniac. I just want to address that. He is a maniac. In these 30 teamers, he will go 0 pitching prospects. That's an extremist. You're a radical extremist. I've reported you. the FBI. I don't know if they've knocked on your door yet, but also you're welcome. The one team we have like this, we have Jeff Ponce. Speaking of which, he's in one of these CBS leagues that Ross and I both cannot pay attention to because it's a terrible platform. Sorry, guys, gets a bad platform. But bro,
But Frank, thank you for being on the episode last week.
Frank, we love you, Frank. Bro, we got Thomas White, we got Sikora, we got Prez isn't me, but we got Birdsong, we got all these, we got a lot of Ryan Sloan, Jamie Arnold, Crute Schoolcraft. Love to hear some thoughts about that after from Rhys, because I just love saying the name Crute Schoolcraft. But yeah, pitching prospects, they can pay. I understand what we're saying. I agree with it, but I still can't. I think it's almost like if you don't play the game, you won't win, right? Like there is a Garrett Cole that can come through. That's obviously a number 1 overall pick, but there are these premier prospects who can come up and start delivering. There's sometimes they're going to be Liberatore, sometimes they can be Noah Cameron looked pretty promising. Birdsong is kind of not taking that long to show early returns. It'll be interesting to see going forward.
Rhys, who was the last collegiate or amateur, and I say that from like the prep ranks, that you saw that really stood out where you're like, he's worth either an FYPD pick, a higher FYPD pick, or he's going to be a guy that absolutely stands out? I think of Noble Meyer's hype and lack of performance so far. And kind of back to the Tyler Glasnow comment that you made, Ross, that was the Jose Fernandez draft as well. So like Jose came up and dominated. Who was the guy that you were like, wow, Rhys?
So he hasn't debuted yet, but he's going to probably debut at some point for the Rays. I saw Carson Williams actually pitch. And this is when he was throwing 99. He was looking really good. And then I also just saw him casually in between innings go play shortstop. And I watched some BP earlier in the day. And I was like, this guy's got it. Like, this guy's going to be the comp I've been working with, and I know we tweeted it out recently, is like a Javi Baez-esque ceiling. Like, good Javi Baez, not last year Javi Baez or most of his Tigers tenure Javi Baez, right? Like, we're talking about a dynamic fantasy asset who maybe steals a little bit less than you think, but there's plenty of power, there's plenty of that. He was the last guy that really stood out to me that I went and saw as a prepster. I also saw Marcelo Mayer as a high school freshman when I went to go see I don't know if he's in organized baseball anymore, but Keone Vaco, he was like this breakout prospect in San Diego that I was like, okay, I'll drive down the 4 hours or so to go see him. I go down there and there's this high school freshman playing shortstop while Cavaco is playing third base. And I'm like, that guy, like I wrote down in my notes, I was like, keep an eye on that guy. That guy's going to be a star. Little did I know he was going to be a top 5 pick star. And he impressed me as a high school freshman as well.
Was that someone at the time, was Meyer, was he getting that hype yet, or was that kind of more of before that?
So there was a bunch of scouts, and they were like, if you like Cavaco, you're gonna like their freshman. Their freshman's really good. We're just not scouting a freshman yet. We're not making concerted efforts to
makes sense.
To see this guy. But when you're already seeing Cavaco because he came out of nowhere, he had some pretty crazy team workouts and everything like that. And obviously that's how the Twins ended up drafting him way too high in the end of the day. And, I fell into it. I drafted Cavaco in a bunch of leagues thinking like, man, this dude is like all that in a bag of chips. But Meyer was like, they were like, if you think this guy's good, wait till this guy. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. He'll be like a top, first round pick. Things change. I saw this guy who was like not a great defensive shortstop, but man, that dude could swing it. And that's all he's done his entire career is that dude just swings it. He's not a great defensive shortstop. That doesn't really matter. He can kind of be like a Xander Bogaerts-esque player.
I just got to ask, you have so much passion. It's obvious when you're talking like these live looks, the scouting talk. Would it be an ideal outcome for you to be an MLB scout one day?
I don't know if that's in the cards. Because I kind of like what I'm doing now. Like, I like getting the chance to go on TV. I like getting the chance to write about whatever I kind of would like to write about. I'm writing the daily sheet every day. I'm starting a podcast. I'm, keeping all the new guys that we've brought on and everything like that, keeping them going and helping them to ultimately get hired. This is sort of the job that I very much, I love it. I don't know if I'm going to interview with teams at any point or anything like that, but I love doing it, in the role that I'm doing it now.
Ross, I thought it was really interesting hearing Rhys just talk about the live looks and the people and maybe the intangibles early on that he spoke on that got him excited. the relationship that we've had, I know that you like to look at the data, obviously scout the stat line, having the model, having those telling indicators. But what are you exactly looking for within the model when you're adding players to your fantasy teams? If it's more of a shallow roster, right? If it's not necessarily that you have, say, 40 minor leaguers where there's always someone to drop, say it's a 15 minor league bench, and you see data that you're like, oh my gosh, this is Junior Caminero, right? Because he was the biggest one that I know of that Scout the Stat Line was right on. What are those indicators for you?
I mean, there's a lot of them, and I think you dig deeper in, but the most obvious one, if you're in a shallower league, is just that's the advantage that Scout the Stat Line gives, is that the data is always up to date. It's there every day. And you can see these guys all of a sudden rising up the rankings. The ranking system, I'll fully admit, is not perfect. There are some flaws with it occasionally. I don't always agree with where guys end up, but it's fairly straightforward. It's just looking at the numbers. These guys are given an output. There are some less straightforward data points like bat speed that are included when available, but it's not necessarily always at any given time and place going to be perfect reflection of probably what the reality for rankings is. But you can see the guys that are moving up fast. And if they start sticking in those high rankings, you got something special. You got something interesting there. Beyond that, I'm just kind of looking at like how well are they making contact? Is this like a flash in the pan? Is this just a hot streak? I always say that I'm a data, but not just a data analyst. I'm also a trend analyst. I'm looking at how they're changing over time. Are they getting better? Does it look like they're learning? Are they making more contact? Those are all important factors to me that I use to try to hone in on who the next guy is going to be. But I would also, I really want to throw this out there, and I've said this before on X Twitter. I think I'm pretty good at what I do, and I stay in my lane with that, but I'm never going to beat a good scout to a good player. Because if they're going to be able to see that when that kid is coming up, as Rhys was saying, a high school and freshman, I'm not going to know that. I'm not really paying attention to high school data. I'm not looking at it that far back because it's not really reliable. You can't really take what's happening there and say, well, this is going to translate into a professional baseball player because the talent that they're playing against is so vastly different. Once they get to a certain level, it's a different story because they're playing against relatively similar sets of talent. So I'm never going to be able to beat somebody that's really going in there, taking a live look at a player if they've got the right instincts to identify that person as being good. It's just a fact. I've been very clear about that on X too. Sometimes I'm able to identify the guys that might get missed by some scouts, but I'm never going to beat like them to some of these guys that are just going to end up being great players.
And Rhys, maybe this is the question to ask you then, because I fall in line with what Ross was saying, especially come FYPD, MLB draft season. I love that content. But after the third round, it's kind of a crapshoot. But I look back, especially at some of the current prospects we have, Kobe Mayo, Cole Keith, Luke Adams in the Brewers organization. There's a lot of the prep hitters that I've seen over the last few years. They get taken later in the draft, be really, really valuable assets. And if you took them with a fourth or fifth round FYPD pick, maybe you got lucky. But why do you think some of these prep bats, these high school bats, make such a huge leap forward in the prospect ranks a year or two after being taken with a later round pick?
Because pro coaching is better than anything than the college can provide and anything that a high school can provide. So that's why these guys make these massive jumps and, physicality that, also think of the difference between like an 18-year-old versus a 21-year-old. Like when I was 18, I was 5'11", 130. And then when I was 21, I was 5'11", 180. It's a different difference entirely, right? So That's why these guys later, especially, ones that go to really good organizations. And that's why, like, whenever the FYPD comes around, like this year, I'm just going to draft guys from really good organizations that take later. That's kind of my strategy if I get stuck with these picks, because unfortunately, sometimes you can't trade out of picks or anything like that. So I think, like, with a guy like Kobe Mayo, we saw the big jump because they worked on his swing. Like, his swing was a little bit like wonky, and it was a weird year in that draft too, because some players were not playing high school games because of the COVID shutdown and everything like that. So the scouts that had either, how do I want to put this, access to the data that they're hitting facilities, or that were able to, because you weren't even allowed to scout back then either. If you somehow managed to, I heard a couple stories, and I'm not going to say who, but some scouts ended up at high school fields where guys were having batting practice and playing games that they were not technically supposed to, and there's an inherent value and advantage that those scouts had. And I'm not saying that was a Kobe Mayo situation or anything like that. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, although I don't think no one's going to come after me for saying anything like that. But, that was one of those things where those teams that did a really good job of scouting in that draft, and that knew things going in. I mean, that's why, was that the Andrew Painter draft, or was that the Noble Meyer draft where they went to Driveline and was basically pitching in front of a TrackMan? Everyone saw it. That was the Nick Bitsko draft too. So that was the Noble Meyer draft. I feel like I'm just it's all starting to come back to me. Nick Bitsko all of a sudden jumped 2 rounds because he had TrackMan data that Kylie McDaniel was willing to put out there. So basically, what to answer your question, like when they come into the Pro Ball, they get better instruction, and they develop more and go from boys to men.
Yeah, that's really good. It's a good, I think, philosophy too that you mentioned, and this is kind of a good bridge for us to get into some of the player talk we wanted to cover today. Ross, you and I both this season so far have been really keen on Braylon Payne in Milwaukee, being a prep bat, a younger guy taken in that class, being a first rounder though. So he's not a name like Mayo or Keith that I'll throw out there because, clearly identified as having potential. But I'm starting to really maybe fall in line with what you said there, Rhys. I might just take more prep guys from good organizations that I trust to develop, that have a type, and I know are developing them. Ross, what are some of the organizations that you've seen from the hitting side that you like to monitor right now?
I mean, clearly something's going well in Milwaukee. I mean, I don't know exactly what changed, but it seems like, I ran the numbers, and the numbers were suggestive of that even before the season started. And I wasn't quite on board with it at that point. But then, I started watching these guys popping up. Luis Pena, like, are you kidding me? Like, from my perspective, they've got 3 guys all on the same team that maybe top 10 guys. You got Braylon Payne, you got Luis Pena, you got Jesus Made. Is it Jesus Made? I'm not
Jesus
exactly
Made.
sure how his name is. Made, that's right. Okay, Jesus Made.
Jesus Made is actually the way he likes to be called.
Well, Jesus made him. I don't know. He's a pretty good hitter. So, it's just incredible. And they got great complementing talent on that same team too. Like, it's not just those 3 guys. Those are just the 3 guys that are like top 10 worthy.
Is Felipe de Torre still on the Mudcats?
Yeah, I believe he is. So, I mean, you got him, Batanti. He's on that team too, isn't he? So that team is just stacked. And yeah, I've been saying this, like, if you live in that area, please go support him, because you're not going to see a team like that again.
Yeah, I think Batanti had his first home run today, actually, which is what he's known for, right? And he hasn't been hitting this season. It's actually been hitting. He just has been hitting for power.
Matt, this is the reason you're moving back to Wisconsin, right? You're just really excited about what the team's doing.
Well, yes, exactly. I'm going to be that much closer to Carolina, so I figure, jump in the car and just drive down and see the Mudcats. It's a better drive than from Las Vegas.
No, I mean, they're going to be in Milwaukee one day, but this is like I genuinely, this is something I'm not sure I've ever said, but I get a little, for fantasy purposes, I get a little suspicious when there's too many good prospects in one organization. I know they can't all be the next Ronald Acuna, right? But the Brewers are doing that right now, and it was kind of a thing for me with Dodgers pitchers right now. I'm like, they can't all be absolute studs, can they? And so I don't know. I guess I would maybe ask Rhys if he's got any idea specifically on these Brewers kids? Because I agree, Ross. It's like it seems like they've put something in the water down there.
Dude, that team is special. I thought that last year when I saw Colt Emerson, Aiden Smith, Ty Pete, Johnny Farmello, Michael Arroyo all on the same roster, that was probably going to be the best I was going to see. And that's the best I've seen in person by a lot. But that's definitely like, I think Jesus Mate might be the #1 prospect in baseball. Like, I think like after Roman Anthony, like that's the next guy. I mean, I know I've been saying in the staff chat, like there's like, it's him, Leo DeVries, who's now going by Leo, I guess, instead of Leo Dollies, which Leo Dollies is like an 80 name. Leo's like, whatever, like a 50 name or whatever. But just for branding purposes, if he ever wants to reach out, the PR firm of Rhys White will definitely fix that issue for him. But that team is special, man. Like Batanti, I mean, if Batanti's your 3rd or 4th best prospect on a roster, you're kind of cooking the gas. And then they have some pitching too, as well at that affiliate. I forget if Mikic is or Misic. I don't even know. I should know.
I think Rhys. I think he is.
Yeah, he's pitching. I don't know if it was Bishop Letson is the one that's hurt. One of the pitchers is hurt, which is kind of, what is the old saying? There's no such thing as a pitching prospect. So maybe that is true in that aspect. But yeah, it's that team is so special, man. Like if you have MILB TV, or if you're just looking around to do something, or if you just want to sign up, this is shameless self-promotion. Bally Sports Live, if you sign up and give them your email, you can watch all minor league baseball games for free. You can watch that team for free. So that team is going to be loaded. I mean, Luis Pena is a really good prospect. Detourier is really good. And then I know, Matt, we talked about it and you pronounced it, but I don't know how to pronounce Adam.
I know. Can you do it, Ross?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even want to.
I tried this week again, Rhys, after we recorded, and I was like, I'm not going to even try. I'll pull it up. I'll pull the Mudcats up, and we'll like circle back to it.
So I won't say his
Adam
name.
Jeski? I don't know.
I won't say his name on Path of the Show because I'm afraid of getting it wrong. Like, I'm so terrified.
Yeah.
He shows up in the rundown. I'm like, I'm just worried we'll just skip over this prospect because I'm not looking dumb on TV. So yeah,
it's sad. He's probably going to get a lot less coverage just because of that.
Right,
Ross. I think
but he's hitting the cover off the ball. He's doing awesome.
He's doing great.
It's Adam Zdrowinski. So it's ADAMCZ. That's tough. EWSKI.
Adam Jeski, something like that.
But yeah, he's hitting. I mean, he's really playing well. Rhys, you talked about that Mariners lineup, right? And I would agree with you, at least from tracking. When I look in every night and see who's doing what, that was a fun box score to always pull up. We've seen kind of some things fall off for some of these players, though, right? Montez is moved up to high A now. Farmello is back, so like looks great. Nice to see him coming back off the ACL. But Emerson's had a little bit of a slower start. Ty Pete has shown the speed, but not necessarily the other tools we looked for. Why do you think that organization had such a plethora of talent at that low A level, only to see a year later maybe some of those attributes fall off?
Oh, so that team was really aided by Julio Rodriguez being awesome from the jump. So they got the prospect promotion PPI pick. And then they had... how else were they able to? So they signed really well. Like Lazaro Montes is a really good sign from Cuba. Like he, big, strong guy who hits the crap out of the ball. I'm throwing around a Franmil Reyes comp is what I'm currently working with. And if that's his upside, that's pretty good. And then Michael Arroyo was a really good sign, for not a lot of money out of Colombia, which is not a traditional baseball market. So that's the reason that they had so much talent is a lot of draft picks that year. They had Colt Emerson really high, Johnny Farmello, Ty Pete, and they had a lot of money in which to invest in that draft. And they clearly made a concerted effort to go high upside prep. And I think it's really worked out for them. I mean, they were able to turn Aiden Smith, who was a 4th or 5th rounder, into, along with Brody Hopkins, into Randy Arozarena, which might end up always, I don't know why teams trade with the Rays. We all play in some leagues and stuff, and we played in leagues in the past where you just don't trade with the best manager and everything like that because, they just have the stacked roster. I don't understand why anyone still trades with the Rays. I think that Randy Arozarena is a good piece for the Mariners at certain points. But if not inconsistent, but he's going to get his 2020 regardless, because that man's going to steal no matter if he's getting caught every single time. But yeah, that's how that team got so good. And then the struggles, I think a lot of it is Colt Emerson's kind of a slow starter. He also doesn't have like the crazy tools yet. The power's not playing in game as much as you would think, but it's still really solid swing decisions. For us coming back from that pretty bad knee injury, although he's been awesome hitting a left on left homer is pretty great. And then Ty Pete, his very raw and unrefined, his approach, and it kind of shows with the way in which he, swings and misses a lot. First pitch strikes, he's very aggressive. The one that's kind of surprising me is Michael Arroyo, who's been kind of, let me pull that up. The last I checked, he wasn't doing that as great as I thought he would, because this is a guy who's got one of the best hit tools in the low minors. But I mean, he sees like 224, so it's like, but the approach still at 361 on base percentage. So this I think that's just normal, natural things that happen with moving up to a more difficult place to hit than the California League.
No, that's great information. And Doc, I asked that because I think what you were saying kind of feeds into that. Like, let's see where these Brewers are at next year. Not that I don't have the same faith that the industry does, that they're really exciting players. It is just what happens, right? What happens with that development? And again, drafting the guy that we were talking about for the Brewers, Adam Shawinski, it was a 15th round pick. Like, to your point of like signings, Rhys, like organizations also need to hit on some guys to add that depth to kind of build around some of those superstars. Ross, Rhys brought up a really interesting point about trading with league managers, or I like to look at it as trading with the best team. It always bothers me when I'm in a league where a guy's been dominant for 5 years, so you would know this well, and managers continue at the bottom of the barrel to trade with that best team. And it seems as though it should be a collective agreement, without being said, because that would be collusion, that, hey, probably not the best idea to keep facilitating the best manager to continue to be the best manager, right? I know you've seen that in some of your leagues where the dynamic finally catches on, but what would your advice be to league managers that are kind of caught in that loop?
Well, so first of all, I mean, yeah, I've definitely gotten that treatment, the no trade treatment, where I'm making killer deals, like offers that are just off the charts in somebody else's favor, and they're either not going through or they're getting overturned, which, for no real apparent good reason. I think kind of comes with the territory, for one. But the flip side of it is, usually if I'm a team that's rebuilding, those are the teams that I want to trade with, because they're usually looking to collect assets. I'm looking to sell assets, and I'm looking to collect prospects. If they're really good at what they're doing, they usually have some that they're willing to move. So I'm not personally as shy with trying to deal with them, because I'm not focused on whether they're going to win. I'm focused on whether I can win in a few years. So I actually feel like teams like that make pretty good trade partners. And then when your time comes around, then maybe it's a different story. You no longer want to deal with that guy. I've had some good rivalries in leagues where it's like, you don't want to trade with each other. And first of all, you probably don't mesh very well. And second, like, you don't want them to get an advantage at all. So, I've also had some managers that were really good, but like their deals were just garbage, and they were able to pull the fleece over on some other people, but it's like, that's not going to work with me. I don't know why you're thinking that I'm going to, trade you my 1-star player for 7 like fringe dudes. That's just not going to happen. So I think it goes both ways, but generally speaking, from a rebuilding standpoint, I'm not afraid to deal with those teams. I actually think it's a good fit.
Interesting. Doc, do you want to go ahead and kick off the last segment today?
That's funny you say that. I'm just clicking around, looking to see how everyone's doing. I said it was going to be a pitcher's duel. It's a pitcher's duel on TV right now. Skeens and Libby got 1 hitters each. We are in, I don't have my glasses on. We're in an inning.
A singular inning. It's the bottom of the 5th.
It's the bottom of the 5th. And so, yeah, 1 hitter each. Libby's got 7 Ks through. It's honestly, he's breaking out so hard. I don't care if it's the Pirates. Like, he's been doing this. But to the point, Evan Carter has a hit and a run. He's back. Or is he? Wait a second. Hold the phone. Is this full count Carter? Is he back?
I was hoping you wore
Show?
the shirt today.
I usually like frolic around the house shirtless, but now that we're trying to be on Prospects Live, gotta wear shirts on the podcast. We always wore shirts on the podcast, Rhys. But yeah, so sorry, it's stand-up hour apparently. But no, I'm excited for Evan Carter. I don't know what to think, but I'll tell you what I do think is that he did this when the lights were brightest. He was 21, or was he 20? He was super young
20.
in the World Series in the 3-hole. Literally sparked them when the Rangers were running out of steam late in the season. They brought him up, and he's hit 306 all the way out, and was hitting some bombs, stealing some bases, playing great defense. It was just that clearly it helped the team in the playoffs. Yeah, it just kept it going, helped them win a World Series. Has had chronic back issues. Obviously, that's a major concern. Seems to keep getting hurt. Maybe put some meat on those bones would help. But I guess it's a question for everyone here. Evan Carter, to me, seems like arguably the most volatile dynasty asset right now, especially in his age bracket, because we're like, who are you? Who are you going to be? What can you be? I see a ceiling of his eye is so good. It could be like a 350 plus OBP, steal a lot of bases, tap into some of that power. He's clearly got a good hit tool. Or it's like, is he even able to stay healthy enough to develop properly?
I mean, I'll go first if you want. Never short on opinions. I still believe. I'm still a believer in Evan Carter. He struggled in the minor leagues this year, but I think most of his struggles are due to injury and him being a little safe, possibly. Not wanting to hurt himself again. And also like shaking off some rust. I think all those things kind of together are probably more indicative of why he struggled. But he still was demonstrating, even when he was struggling, a really great eye. I think long term he's going to be just fine. Now, in a fantasy league that I own him in, I did move away from him, but it wasn't because I don't believe in him, because I still do. It's just that he was no longer minor league eligible, and I can't have that spot being taken up in that league because I'm a contending team and I'm trying to stay that, so every little spot matters. But yeah, I'm a believer, and I wish him all the luck, and it's good to see him back up. Hopefully they brought him up at a good time.
Rhys, what do you think? Do you share the opinion of Ross, or do you have a little bit more skepticism?
I agree with Ross. I'm a little bit less enthusiastic about it because back issues just do freak me out a little bit. It's not like your back magically, like if you have reoccurring back issues, it's just going to continue to keep getting worse and worse and worse. So I just wonder, he's going to be awesome in spurts because the batting eye is good. There is enough power there. I don't know if they're going to really let him run as much as he probably could because of the injury risk that the back carries, but it's still definitely worth rostering. And I understand, like Ross, I get that. I was in a league where I'm in the same spot, but I'm like, I can't keep this guy clogging up my bench spot when I can use that bench spot on Zach McKinstry or something like that, who's the hottest hitter on the face of the planet apparently these days. But so yeah, at a certain point you do have to cut bait, and I understand that. But I'm a little bit skeptical with the back injuries, but I still think that the upside's still there.
Yeah, I just think, Doc, you brought it up. If he doesn't end up panning out because of injuries or even lack of performance, I don't know that I've ever in my fandom seen a player help a team win a World Series as he did and then flame out, right? I mean, we will always look back if it doesn't work out for him as the back injury being what held him back from having a career. But there were some concerns too. Splits weren't great. You said it, tools, grades seemed pretty good, higher draft pick. But I want to transition into our next piece here, just overall favorite prospect. This was something that Doc had written down in the outline, and I think it's a really open-ended question, right? It could be Jesus Mate, or it could be a guy that's maybe outside the top 150. Ross, who's somebody right now that you would peg as your favorite prospect?
Well, I already mentioned him earlier, probably Luis Pena, and I don't have enough Luis Pena in my life. I've been trying to trade for him where I can, but kind of did myself in because I ranked him very aggressively. I think I had him 9th overall or something like that. And so now everyone's like, well, you think he's the 9th overall, so pay up, So it's not working out for me, not working out in my favor. But I think he's got an excellent hit tool. I think he's got a great eye. He's fast, very fast. The one question mark, this is maybe the one curiosity or uncertainty, is how much power he's got. So if there's, right now he's slugging 483, slugged 583 in DSL last year, which is really excellent. If he's able to do either of those numbers, I think you've got a superstar potential player on your hands. But the caveat is one home run last season too. So there's still a little bit of an open-ended question there. But Luis Pena, I think I would also say I really like Franklin Arias, and a sleeper guy. Yeah. A sleeper guy is Demurray Pena, another Pena. I don't know if you guys are very familiar with him, but he's just one of those guys that I find very interesting, very high contact sort of guy, doesn't strike out very much, might have a little bit of power. He's like, which organization or team?
Yeah. Which organization?
He's with the Twins.
Okay.
Yeah.
No idea.
So he's a really interesting
single
one.
A. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, really interesting one. I'd recommend you check him out, but I'm not recommending everybody add him. He's a deeper league sort of play.
Rhys, he stole yours, but I want to give you the opportunity to just hype up your guy.
I love Franklin Arias. I think that he is very comfortably very comfortably might be. That's not a great way to phrase it. I think that there's a chance he's a top 75 prospect. I think that people are sleeping on him a little bit, which is interesting because he's a Red Sox prospect. I did actually want to ask the group in general. We all do rankings in some level or fashion, right? How often does your rankings get used against you in trade negotiations? Because anytime Prospects Live drops their top 100 list, I get in the league and they're like, okay, so teams, and then people start using that against me in trade negotiations. And I imagine that's the same thing with you guys. And I imagine that's the same thing with anybody else who puts out public facing rankings, is that they get used against them in trade negotiations. And that is maybe the quote worst part of this whole thing. I was just wondering if you guys have had that. I know Ross just mentioned that he did. I didn't know if Doc and Matt, if you guys have had that sort of situation happen to you guys as well.
Doc, go for it.
So I guess it's a blessing that my home leagues are just the funkiest ones of all. My home league, they're a bunch of jerks. Like, they're not nice people. Like, they're guys like I was buddies with in high school. We kind of like drifted apart. And everyone's just super hostile. And so they've actually never supported my journey, essentially. There's like one guy who's like, yeah, actually, I think Doc's kind of like figuring it out. But the rest of them, like, you don't know ball. No, you're a fraud. Your rankings suck. And I'm like, okay. Like, I'm sitting here. My team's like crushing it. But yeah, they were like, you're the only person who has Augustin Ramirez in their top 50. You're an idiot. And I'm like, am I though? No, I'm not an idiot. I looked like an idiot for like a second a couple days ago. But anyway, yeah, I actually haven't had it. I think that Matt, because I'll let Matt answer that question too. Ross and Matt, before you came on, Rhys, as much as my home league's full of jerks, we've been going since 2013, and it's kind of like, it's been good. I'm happy. It's a Yahoo league, but it's good. And these two, though, people vetoing your trades, just having it out for you and like stubbornly like holding you to your ranks, hasn't happened for me, really. I've had people say, no, I've had them say, you're not getting Caleb Durbin for X price because I know you like Caleb Durbin way too much. Like, I've had that once, but it was more of a playful thing. I was able to buy it off of them eventually. But Matt, like, have you had people kind of turn on you like that?
I think it's interesting. And Ross, I think what I'm about to describe bleeds into the problem that you had. And our home league we're on year 13. My biggest gripe is we have half the league that has no business playing with the other half of us. And I say that respectfully. They don't care. They don't pay attention. They don't have the same level of knowledge. So half of us are clamoring to have more competition. We're hoping to have managers come in that roster the prospects that are out there and should be owned. I mean, coming into the year, Jesus Mate wasn't owned, and there's room for him to be owned. He's not owned because 6 guys don't have a single prospect on their team. And there are dynamics to that, but I think when I look at it that way, I then see what you had, Ross, and say, okay, but what if we have more competition come in? If we have more competition come in, well, we might have more gang violence in our league than we currently have. Ooh, I'm currently the league terrorist because I want to compete. So I'll kind of pass it to you because your journey might actually be a foreshadowing if I had gotten my way.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through, and it's not the first time we've had some kind of turnover in my home league, but it's been around for a long time. It's a lot of fun. We have had a lot of fun over the years. We've had some tumult and drama, and we turned over like half the league just not too long ago. And I don't want to get too into detail because everybody's got their own version of the events, but a lot of it was very cutthroat competition, and to the point of where you're maybe crossing the boundary. But what I do want to say, though, Doc, relating to what you were saying, is I think that that's how my league was too with me. Like nobody cared about what I was doing. Oddly enough, they would try to. A lot of the owners would kind of got the feel for the type of guys that I like, and they would go after those guys like crazy. But they didn't use my rankings, as far as I know. Like nobody was using my rankings. None of them were members of STS. Like none of these guys were. And I was like, there's a system that works and it's proven. You've played against me, that you can use. All you got to do is pay $5, but not a single one of them. But like same kind of thing. It's like we got all these members joining from all areas of the internet, and none of these guys from my home league, they're just like, screw you.
But none of your friends.
Yeah. So it's just funny how that kind of plays out. But yeah, they go after.
By the way, the guy who doesn't know ball in the home league has in my farm system Basayo, Anthony, Max Clark, Weatherholt, Eldridge, and Caglione, and I think I'm in like first place. So with like guys like Freeman, like I got vets too. So
I think you might know ball.
Lose for a long time. I don't know if the league's gonna last. That's a good farm.
But what you just said is important. And Ross, like you didn't have to cross into that territory, which I think is if you don't have enough competition, at some point a home league might just fold because of pure domination. And that's always a risk too. And in our home league, we had set parameters up over the last 13 years to prevent that from happening. But it is interesting because it seems as though there is no league without fault. And, seeing what you had to do in your home league this year, Ross, like it's still alive, thankfully. You were able to find enough people to keep this thing going that wanted to come in and face the challenge of taking you down, which, as I've told you on the side, is going to be very challenging. And my window is 5 to 7 years from now. But yeah, Rhys, I think actually for me, like no one even looks at my rankings, and I say that respectfully because I do more podcasting. I think that's actually a benefit for me. I'm not as much of a writer as maybe I would like to be at times, and so I haven't run into the issue of rankings really costing me. But Doc does a pretty good job of holding me accountable. Yeah. One
thing to add, in my other leagues, not my home league, people do that to me all the time. And in the real smart ones, because there are some guys that are really good that I've played with, and the real smart ones will find a guy that I've got ranked that they like, that I've got ranked lower than another guy that they've got, and they'll send it to me. And the one guy actually made me change my rankings because I was like, why would I not accept this trade? And so like upon like reflection, the next iteration, I was like, okay, you can't offer me that trade anymore because I've swapped these guys in my ranking.
If you don't mind me asking, who are those 2 prospects? I'm always fascinated with, like, a fellow ranker, like what makes you change your ranks? What are those 2 prospects?
Kevin McGonigal and Franklin Arias. It was those 2.
He wanted McGonigal?
I had Arias like 1 or 2 spots higher, and then he was offering me Arias for McGonigal, and I was not like ready to make the deal, And then I had to think about it and be like, okay, well, if I'm not willing to do that deal, then I have to actually reflect on my rankings as well.
Yeah.
Rhys, you asked the question, but you've run into that, I'm assuming, and how do you deal with it?
So when I get stuck into that same situation, I think to myself, although most of the time I am ranking from like a real life perspective, but I do think like I will be reflective and think, well, would I trade this player for this player like in a fantasy league? And then if I would, um, I forget, were you with the McGonagall side or were you the area side? And which side did you, Ross?
I had McGonagall, and I was
Okay.
I was high on both of these guys. I was very high on Arias, I think you would say, but high on both of them. It's just that when I was presented that situation, I was like, actually, as much as I like Arias, like I am not ready to make this move. I feel like there's something McGonagall's going to unlock and yada yada yada. But then I was like, okay, well then I better change my position publicly facing too.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm with you on that side of that too. Like I would rank McGonagall over Arias as well. I think McGonagall has a higher upside with a higher floor, honestly. But I'm trying to think. What is the most recent example of that? You know what? It was Chase DeLauder. Not only has Chase DeLauder dealt with every foot injury known to mankind, but I thought to myself, well, would I actually roster him? And I know I said I do mostly real life stuff, but I did think like, okay, if I had to roster Chase DeLauder, would I rather have this prospect over him? And then we just bumped Chase DeLauder down quite a few spots. He's the most recent example. We bumped him down like 10 or 12 slots after this is before the injury, I believe, in spring training too. So yeah, in the offseason when we did our top 100, he was the big one for us that we decided to bump down. And then that was what made me be reflective on that sort of process.
Yeah, that's how I rank. I mean, that's how I try to rank. At least I go position by position, so I create my depth charts,
Mhm.
and then I go in and from 1 to 100, or as far as I want to go, I look through the entire depth chart and say, who would I rather have? Would I trade, the shortstop for the White Sox, Colson Montgomery, for the 11th third baseman? And it's hard because you really have to think about it in regards to, okay, daily head-to-head points, head-to-head cats, roto, and it doesn't always fit perfectly, especially, Rhys, if you're doing real life, real world, right? Because you have defense that plays into the equation then, and there are other variables. But I think it can be pretty precise if you go with the would I trade A for B.
Yeah. I mean, in real life, you have to deal with positions like, you're always going to rank shortstops and catchers higher than you're going to rank the first base prospects, right? Which is why, like I mentioned recently that CJ Kafis I had underranked because he's a first base prospect and I view things through a real life value. And not that I didn't think that the bat was awesome. It's just he's a first baseman, although he's been playing
First
left and
baseman.
right field. So yeah, like that's one of those things where I have to take that into account when it comes time to like midseason and everything. We start re-ranking prospects and everything for Prospects Live is that sort of positional value of it. I have a question for you guys. I feel like I'm derailing this podcast. How heavily do you weight guys who are going to end up at second base with how not great the second base position is? Do you guys bump up someone like Luis Pena or something like that because of his ultimate home of ending up at second base?
I feel like that to me, Jackson Holiday would be the best example. We kind of knew he'd end up at second. If you're going to be a Jackson Holiday, a great contributor in most of the fantasy stats, I honestly would prefer you at second base. But you have to be at the top of that. Ross, Doc, what do you think?
I mean, I agree, but I tend to not try to factor in position too much in my rankings just because there's so much variability. You have Cody Bellinger coming up as a first baseman, ended up in center field, Gold Glove center field.
Being a Gold Glove center fielder too. So yeah, that's
Merrill as well, right?
Yeah, well, and who is the more Dalton Varsho, same thing, came up as a catcher, Gold Glove center fielder. Just odd examples. There's a lot of variability, so I don't, I'm not putting a ton into that myself, just because it's like, well, what's the point if they're gonna, if there is a good chance that this guy ends up at a completely different position, to weigh that a lot. Now, I do kind of want to key on something that you guys were talking about with, would you trade one guy for other when it comes to your rankings? I think generally speaking, that's probably a pretty good way to do it. But I think there are factors that could sway the decision without the ranking. Like proximity as an example. Like if you are waiting for somebody to contribute this year, or maybe you don't need them. I don't know what the circumstances would be that you would say you don't need them. But if you do think that they're going to play maybe this year and the other guy's a few years away, maybe you would rank that guy higher, but you wouldn't want to roster him. Just an example. I think there's a few out there. Of course, this does not apply to my McGonagall Arias situation. So
no, but Ross, literally that's for me. This in the last year, it's been DeVries and Made. Maybe over the last 6 months. I think they both have incredible skills. Rhys, you said maybe Made is the number one prospect in baseball after Anthony, which is very fair. For me, the hope is that Made is DeVries this time next year, what DeVries is doing this time this year. So for me, DeVries gets that one ranking boost. And it can always change, right? If DeVries goes to AA and sucks and Made hits incredible in high A and gets to AA and does better, things will change. But I think maybe for me and what I was hearing you say, Ross, that is exact example for my rankings. Like Made is still behind DeVries because DeVries might be there just 1 year sooner.
I mean, he's also a Padres prospect, so he might be up next week. So you never know with him.
Or
right?
he might not be any good. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Padres are a tough system. Doc, I know you're just in agony right now because Liberatore lost the lead. I guess it was a tie.
No, that was BS. I've been watching the game. So
I saw you agonizing.
I'm glad you brought it up. I didn't want to have to keep bringing up Libby on this podcast. It's going to be old news by tomorrow. But yeah, man, O'Neal Cruz goes to steal it. It gets challenged. It's pretty clearly got him. They don't call him out. Okay. And then next at bats, Libby gets squeezed while in the zone. It's like, okay, should have been a strikeout. And then next thing you know, it's full count. And Brian Hayes gets a meatball cutter down the middle. That's
He's still in the game.
He's still in the just one run, but yeah, it was like a really cool pitchers duel. It's kind of stupid way for that to end. They're both he's still in the game, yeah. But anyway, like keeping this, Rhys, you're talking about derailing the podcast. I actually usually Matt gives somewhat of a structured outline, and then we just like obliterate it because we just kind of we just see what we want to talk about. I was responsible for today's outline. I basically was like, these guys know ball. We can kind of just go with it. Like when I go on other people's podcasts, sometimes they're like they got really heavy. Like you need to fill in the blanks. I shout out to the guys. I was on a podcast last night. They're like fill in the blanks with these players. I'm like I got to do work. Come on, man. I'll wing it. Because I mean, you friggin' if you're writing about the stuff actively, if you're following if you're watching ball, if you're watching prospects, it can help. And listen, I get it. I'm not sitting here saying everyone should be on that level. It's like you got a lot of kids, you got a heavy job. I'm barely kind of keeping afloat. I think a lot of us, once we I got a family now. I got 2 kids and a wife, and so it's like, okay, it's definitely been harder. So I definitely have a lot of sympathy. Frankly, I have a lot of sympathy for people. Why people like get in the DMs and like are asking for help with fantasy because they're like, dang it, I don't have time for this. Can you guys have lots of time, right? I'm like, well, I don't, but I am hopelessly addicted. So here's my answer to you. And honestly, yeah. So I mean, this has been a fun one. It has been one of our most random podcasts, but having a blast doing it. What do y'all think about? Maybe this will be my last question I ask the crowd here. This is not the crowd or the audience. This is apparently just a bunch of other guys. But Jack Caglianone. What are we thinking here? Is this someone who it's pretty easy for me to see him struggling in his first, audition when he gets to the major leagues. But I guess the part of my question would be, is he up this year? When is he up this year? How does he do? And like, is this guy, he just had another 2 home runs today. Like, what are we looking at here? Is he going to be able to overcome the hack and slash?
Rhys, I want you to start with this one because we had a really interesting conversation that you don't have to go into last week. But what do you see from the profile, and do you think, to allude to Doc's questions, that he's up?
I think that, just looking at this Royals offense, if you can call it that, there's not a lot stopping him if they really think this guy is ready. Like we were talking about, I mean, Vinny Pasquantino has been one of the worst hitters in baseball. Michael Garcia is having a little bit of a breakout, if I remember correctly seeing. Drew Waters has been hot all out of nowhere, but it's a lot of players. It's mixed match pieces. I mean, they moved him to the right field for a reason. So they obviously think that Cags can go play there, and then that can speed up the timeline if the bat is ready. And we've seen guys move quickly through after being in college last year. So I think that we have a chance that we could see. I think we could very much see him. I think it'd be very aggressive, but this is a team that needs that offensive spark that Cags can provide. I don't know. I was very outwardly not liking Cags in college, and all of a sudden, these Florida fans have started to retweet my tweet saying that I didn't think the guy can hit. So that's not been fun for me on social media. But because if you put opinions out there, apparently people are just going to like bookmark it and then bring it up later, which is not fun. But it is what it is. It happens. It's part of the game. But yeah, this is a lineup that kind of needs a little bit of offensive juice, and he can kind of provide that if you're willing to live with the pretty crazy swing and miss. And I mean, when he makes contact, as we've seen today, the ball goes a million miles. So he's definitely someone that I think has a chance to be up. And then the Royals do fancy themselves contenders. So I think that they might need that offensive spark.
I think it's well, I mean, I think it's super interesting. First, you can tell when somebody's planning to do that when your tweet is getting more bookmarks than it's getting likes. That's usually the telltale sign. Okay, right. What did I say wrong here? So regarding Cags, he's got insane power. I think he's a very talented person, athletic. It makes sense that they move him to right field. The guy's got a cannon. So I think I'm going to take the other side, though. I'm going to say the Royals should not bring him up until next season. Now, unless he's if he keeps hitting dingers like this every day, and he goes the Nick Kurtz route, okay, different story. Maybe he's proven that he's overmatching the level and he needs to be moved up. But he strikes me as someone, like you were saying, Doc, that is going to take a little extra seasoning, and I don't think you want to rush him. So I think there's a ton of power there. I think he should spend a little time in AAA making sure he gets it sorted out before he comes up. So if I were to say what I think should happen, I think he should be up next season. And maybe early on, starting the year. Who knows? But I don't think the Royals should rush it. Will they? I don't know. I mean, if they feel like they can win with him in there, then they probably will bring him up.
Yeah, and Garcia, Doc, you posted about him this week. A little bit of an emergence this week, and I think he's been playing better as of late. But I don't know who their current right fielder is. Do you guys know who is there? Is it Waters?
It's Hunter Renfroe.
I mean, how do you take Hunter Renfroe out of the lineup?
Not good.
Well, I mean,
it's bad that I know that. That means I'm watching too many Royals games.
The ceiling for Caglione is obviously higher, but if you think about it, him coming up might be a similar kind of player. Cannon in right field, hits with a lot of power, might not hit for a lot of average, might not get on base too much.
Yeah.
Well, you said it. You said you brought up Kurtz. It's Kurtz isn't doing great, and he's got a way more polished approach than Cags. It's amazing how and you can be someone who is just getting into fantasy. You can be someone who's been into prospecting, and for a while now. We'll all get a little bit of tunnel vision. And all we'll see when the call-up happens is Hall of Fame superstardom. It's just amazing, man. And then we're like, what? What's Nick Kurtz? I remember I was on the podcast with Matt here, and we're talking about prospects, talking about Nick Kurtz. And we were talking about how you have to be patient because basically every prospect's going to suck. Unless there's someone like Nick Kurtz, where obviously they can't. And I wasn't being sarcastic at the time. And I caught myself in the middle of that sentence saying, I guess there is a chance. I don't think it's going to happen. Of course it happened because he's a prospect and he's not falling apart. But yeah, man, the gulf between AAA and MLB, I'm sure Rhys would agree, seeing a lot of these games, it seems like it's never been wider. It's almost like we're beating a dead horse with that one, but I'm guessing you would agree, Rhys.
Yeah,
I mean, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., think about that. The guy was hitting 400 in AA for half a season. sorry to interrupt, by the way, Rhys.
No,
But
you're okay.
like, he's just a great example of that. And then he came up, and next thing you know, he was like yesterday's news. He was garbage. For a long time, he was treated like, oh, he's never going to figure it out. Like, it's done with him. And he was like 22 years old. He hits too many ground balls. Okay, he's 22. Like, give him some time to figure it out. Let him hit the ball the right place instead of just, making contact. But anyway, that's kind of my diatribe on that.
Well, and Rhys, I think you might allude to this, but if any of the listeners are interested, look back at Soto, Yordan Alvarez, Mike Trout, Bryce Harper. Look at some of the superstars in the game. See what they did at their last real minor league performance. I mean, Yordan Alvarez in 2019 at Round Rock, 56 games, 23 home runs, was batting .343. It was incredible dominance. And normally when I look back on these superstars' minor league production, it is a glaring spotlight that they are completely done with the minor leagues. Not just Nick Kurtz done with the minor leagues, like they are ready to go and hit the ground running at the major leagues. I mean, we've been excited about Jackson Holiday. We were excited about the Jacksons in general. I haven't seen a prospect put up, say, Yordan Alvarez minor league numbers in a while. And maybe that's that leap that we're talking about. Rhys, what do you think?
I think teams are also not keeping guys down in the minor leagues as long as they used to. Obviously, with the prospect promotion incentive, there has been that move to promote guys quicker. I mean, I don't understand why Nick Kurtz they waited as long as they did with him. Yordan, that was a really fascinating year because there was a conversation. I don't know if you guys remember this. Who was the better prospect, Yordan Alvarez or Christian Pache? Who I don't even know what team Christian Pache is on, but no one was taking the Yordan Alvarez side. Like that was like a big deal. There was a big conversation on Twitter and everything like that at the time. It was like, how can you have this first base prospect? He's hitting in the PCL. He's basically playing baseball on the moon. And then it's like, oh, he just happens to be like, a generational hitter who, when healthy, is one of the, except for this year, is one of the best players in baseball. So, yeah, like the guy, like Doc was saying earlier, like the gap between Major League Baseball and AAA has never been as wide as it is now. I assume every prospect that gets called up to the major leagues is just going to struggle. I don't expect Paul Skeens, which makes him, what Paul Skeens is special, right? Like he was like third in Cy Young voting, despite technically not being a qualified pitcher. And, he would have won the ERA title and all that. So, or I believe he would have been in contention for it. I could be wrong in there. But yeah, that's one of those things where the gap has never been wider. So at this point, I think that we should just expect players to struggle, and that those that don't, they might be, there's some flash in the pans and everything here and there. But Christian Campbell's been really good. I mean, he goes like an 860, 870 OPS right now. So like maybe just the really good ones just figure it out right away.
Yeah, I think that's it. We'll have to monitor it, right? Things have changed. Velocity has changed. Age to level has changed. Yordan, that year that you spoke on, he was 22 years old at AAA. And maybe that's a relevance point. Maybe that's important to add. Doc, well, I guess, gentlemen, I have to leave before my wife kills me because I have a U-Haul to pack up, and we leave Las Vegas in about 8 hours. Doc, anything else you wanted to cover today? Also, congratulations. He has the lead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Matthew Liberatore just shook off Pozo twice. The guy, a catcher named Pozo, right now, which is amazing. I was like, who the frig is Pozo?
He went first to home yesterday, I think. It was incredible. If you have an opportunity to go watch the Victor Scott, it was amazing.
He's got a crazy thing. He's one of those guys who was like Uber driving or from Venezuela, impoverished, just whatever, a crazy story, and he's getting his chance now. He's actually a good hitter, but Liberatore shakes him off twice and throws a loopy curve right middle. The guy doesn't even swing. It was crazy. I don't think he busted the curve out all game, but no, I just wanted to thank Rhys for coming on here from Prospects Live. Ross bridging the gap today. Where I think it's just a really cool thing we're doing here. It's going to be a lot of fun moving forward, man. And I guess we know where to find you. But any last words from our guests here would be what I would want to give them that honor.
Rhys, you go for it.
And then you can go whenever you want.
I hate going first. Any last words? Just make sure that you're, if you subscribe to Prospects Live, now is a good time. We have so much content coming out. I believe Ross, correct me if I'm wrong. The mock draft simulator is free until the 15th. And let me tell you, I am not getting a lot done at my day job right now because of the mock draft simulator. So I'm also not like, it's not my Prospects Live responsibilities aren't falling by the wayside. Just my normal, my real life job is falling behind. So that's fine. It is what it is. And then we have so much stuff. We have the daily sheet, which I think is one of the best daily offerings. It is just nonstop, like every prospect from every player, honestly, that's worth noting, from Major League Baseball to the complex leagues. We got you covered on there. And every Wednesday I record, and I believe it goes up the next following week, Path to Show on Bally Sports Live and Stadium. That's been a really fun experience. I can't recommend it enough. If you want to watch minor league baseball for free, subscribe to Bally Sports Live and Stadium, and then you can watch all the games for free. Just give them your email, create a password. It is a great deal. And I think that's really all. I feel like I'm missing something because we have so much content coming out. Like I just did a podcast yesterday, and we felt like we had a 20-minute segment on all the stuff coming out at Prospects Live. So we got a lot of good stuff coming out, and I think that I'm very excited about how everything's going. I think, Ross, you have single-handedly invigorated a lot of people because, we got an ownership change and everything like that, leadership change. And not that Matt and spotted there wasn't anything wrong. There's nothing wrong going on there. But I think that, everyone wants to show off, have a good foot, start off on a good foot with the new boss and everything like that. So I think everything's been fantastic. I think we've really stepped up our game. Our new website's absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, I can't thank you guys enough for having me. And yeah, thank you so much.
Well, I guess this gives me my opportunity to plug both Scout the Statline and Prospects Live. I am so excited for where we're going with all this. And I've said this, I was saying this preseason, like I want to bring this community together. I want us all to kind of like come together and build some resiliency. This is kind of like high level stuff, but I feel like this industry is ripe for the picking from the big boys, to be honest. And the best way to prevent that from happening is to build something amongst us all in the community. And so that's what I hope we can accomplish here. And really bring it together. And as a user, it's so much better to go to one place rather than 50 different places. Right now, it's very much Wild West sort of setup where everybody's kind of doing their own thing, which is great. And all the people that are working so hard doing that, I want to give them all their due credit, because that's really like the direction that we started going with Scout the Statline too. We just wanted to start building something we liked that was cool and helpful to people. And, I honestly had zero designs when we started doing that. It just morphed into this thing. But also, nobody wants to pay like $5 for this guy's advice and this guy's advice and this guy's advice. And next thing you know, you've got 13 subscriptions and they're between $5 and $10 and $15 each. It really starts tallying up, and it kind of feels like the Netflix sort of setup where it's like where they're going to Trojan horse you in with like a $5 cheap, and then next thing you know, it's like $20 a month, $25 a month. I just want to create somewhere where people are going to want to go for all their information, really. And if we can bring all the great minds together, then hopefully we can all sort of benefit together. I think the dream for a lot of us, Rhys, and you might echo this too, but for me too, is to kind of build this into a thing that it's like that we can make this our focus, our life focus, and it can be our job. Like it is our job, but everybody is kind of on their own, right now, and just kind of really grinding out little gains here and there, if anything at all. Like I started writing for free, I was just writing on the side. That's all I was doing. So I don't want to take away from that. I don't know, that passion sort of work, but I do want to build something where it's like, it's easier for people. It's accessible. It has everything that people need. So that's what we're working on. And I think Prospects Live is going to really take off this year. I think it already has started. It's been a lot of fun. And the mock draft simulator, that thing is so cool. Like you can read, it's free. Like it blows my mind. I don't know why we're giving it away for free, but we are. So you better check it out. You can read scouting reports on all those players. It's just a lot of fun. If you have any interest in the draft, you should check that out.
I just used it for the first time. I'm never using it again for a good reason. So I got the Cardinals, a couple of my favorite teams. I don't really have favorite teams, but I got teams I follow. The Cardinals I just picked Ethan Holiday with them. Oh, bro, we got Ethan Holiday at 5. That's not happening, but it happened here. And then the Royals picked a Hoosier, Corbin Dickerson. So yeah, I
Nice.
think I'm going to leave it. We're going to go on a high note. And speaking of going on a high note, I think Matt has to leave. So
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Matt. That's really exciting.
Thank you.
You know, the move in general is.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, my wife just keeps sending me text messages and I just keep not answering. So I'm in trouble. But guys, it was an absolute pleasure. And Ross, kind of to re-emphasize what you had just said, I texted you this past week. We were talking about home league drama and just, personal stuff. But I had said to you at the end just how impressed I was with everything the guys that at Prospects Live that they're doing. And Rhys, you and Drew are a huge piece of that. Like, you guys are awesome. You guys do such incredible work and you're such a value to the industry. And I hope your vision of kind of bringing everyone together and making kind of that, industry behemoth that everyone gets to do what they want, it comes true, because I think there's a lot of great content creators and a lot of great value there. So thank you to both of you for coming on today. Rhys, it was great seeing you again. And Ross, pleasure as always. Doc, send us out.
I'm your Huckleberry.
We will see you guys next week.